All right, we are live. Jake McKibben, how are we doing? Free agent bonanza today. We feeling good?
I'm feeling great, mate. I mean, anytime you say live, we're live, I immediately get the heebie-jeebies and think don't say anything inappropriate. But I think I'm getting better at this stuff. So just had a great dinner. My girlfriend's mom cooked up a feast of dauphinoise potatoes. I'm feeling great. How you doing, member?
I'm doing well. It's 3 p.m. here in Seattle. It's a very sunny day outside, which is why I've spent all day inside looking at other men and their profiles and what they've done. So very enthusiastic to be able to use that work into what's hopefully a pretty productive conversation today. So, I mean, the offseason started. It's still pretty fresh. It wasn't too long ago the Dodgers won the World Series in nail biting 7 game set. But now the Brewers are back to relevance again. We're looking to refuel heading into next season. So, high level, what do you think Milwaukee's top priorities are this winter?
Honestly, this is like the biggest question because, like, for the last couple of years of covering the team, like, we've come up with all these theories. It's kind of like watching, I don't know if you guys are as big in the traders as we are in the UK, but like, we just finished an episode and everyone comes up with all these theories as to, who's the bad guy, what's going to go happening. And in the end, we're consistently wrong, right? So this is pure conjecture. You would think shortstop might be the answer, but I'm not entirely sure that's going to be the way they go. So I wonder, I think it all plays down to a few things, right? Mm-hmm. So if Freddie Peralta gets traded or Brandon Woodruff doesn't sign, and I think one of those two is going to be in the Brewers next year. But if either of them doesn't, I think they'll want the veteran pitcher somewhere. And I have a weird name coming down the line for you there. I think Jordan Montgomery might be an option, but we can get to that later, okay? Or if we are going the shortstop route, there's a couple of names, but there's not enough names, which means that everybody's going to be in on like the one guy who showed at least a little bit of promise because Bo Bichette can't play shortstop. And then you've got like IKF, who has more of a noodle than, Joey Ortiz is a bat. And then you've got like, I don't know, Paul DeYoung, who like got cut from the Nationals. I mean, hey, I'm not saying no, because that sounds like the most Brewersy thing ever. Like when he was like, he wasn't really an option last year, and everybody balked at him. They're like, "No, we'll not do this year. We'll wait another year until his stock value plummeted even further, and then we'll snatch." But yeah, I don't know. What are you thinking at this point, Jason?
Well, first of all, I got to shout out Paul DeYoung because he's like I don't know if you play Immaculate Grid, but I swear I use Paul DeYoung on like my top two guys are Paul DeYoung and Bartolo Colon because they've been around the block. Like Bartolo, I just know him in like every jersey he's been in, and then Paul DeYoung, I think is like the most recent journeyman, other than Tommy Pham, who I just remember like, oh yeah, he's like randomly like on these teams that you would never, tie together otherwise. So I use him a lot, but I think you're right. Like I think the rotation is pretty depleted, and depending on what Woodruff does, I mean, like before, what was it in 2023 when they non-tendered him and then they brought him back on this like funky backloaded deal while he was recovering. That was something that they did. They could do that again, I guess, maybe. They did make a qualifying offer, so we'll see what ends up happening with that. And then Freddie Peralta, I feel like we won't know until we know. I feel like it's going to be a lot of conjecture. Like people were talking about him getting. I feel like we talk about him getting traded every day and every year. So we'll kind of see what ends up happening with that. But other than that, dude, there are a lot of positions in that rotation that need to be filled. Guys that are not coming back from last year, and then
or do they, Jason? I mean, because the thing is, you've got loads of rookies. You've got Logan Henderson there who shoved. I mean, there were some weaknesses, but he shoved in the openings he had. Robert Gasser's coming back, who has historically also shoved despite some sort of weaknesses underneath the sort of surface stats. Chad Patrick looked a new man with his slurve. You've got Quinn Priester. Depending on the Freddie situation, you've got Jacob Mizorowski. Then you've got some sort of guys coming up towards AAA. Tyson Harden shows a lot of sort of maybe developments. Carlos Rodriguez can fill in, though he's maybe more only in break glass in case of emergency. Like they can fill a rotation with solid enough guy. So, like, how would you elevate from that?
Yeah, it's I guess it's a decision of like, dude, especially if they trade Freddie Peralta and like somehow, some way, Quinn Priester ends up being the most tenured big leaguer in that rotation, and it's literally all rookie. I don't know if you want to, let the kids take over the Oval Office there, but I mean, you're right. Like they could theoretically do something like that. Like that is legal, I guess. And I think there's a lot of pressure of like, you won however many was it 97 games this past season, and it's like, can you do it again, or are you gonna like let the kids play and then end up with 84 wins and third place in the NL Central? It's probably not the way to follow up what was already like a somewhat disappointing postseason run, like just absolutely getting hogwashed by the Dodgers and letting that one Japanese dude like just go off on you. But I think this is a good segue so into like our main bit and our main discussion, which is I wanted to talk about who you think would be individual free agent fits at three different levels of like realisticness, right? On the first level, we have like the very boring Milwaukee traditional, like, oh, we're getting a guy, we're improving on the margins, we're getting someone to, not like rework or overhaul an entire position, but like definitely is going to add like 1 or 2 wins over the course of the season. So that's like the first level. Second level is like a little bit of a reach. Like maybe Manor's having a really good day. He's like, you know what, let's just go spend a little bit more cash than usual on this kid over here. And then there's like the wait, is this real life kind of free agent where it's like, if you were to wake up to that headline, you would think that it's a John Heyman arson judge type of, mistake, or you have actually like escaped the matrix and entered a world where the Brewers are a big spending team. So I think to get started, I'd love to hear from you first. Who is like an idea of a boring but realistic safe bet on a free agent signing the Brewers might make this winter?
I mean, I feel like they're always chasing after rotation depth. And let's face it, with the Brewers, it's someone they can bring to spring training who they think is probably a 1 year deal. They can cut if they're like, this ain't working, lad. But they'll want that sort of depth because they know injuries are coming. And one of the reasons they can win consistently is because their fifth starter is generally more like a 3-4 sort of pitcher in a rotation because they're like, we don't have that drop off where some guys are pitching like their ninth guy coming up from AAA. So that's where I feel like the Jordan Montgomery situation is super interesting from last year. So obviously they got him from the Diamondbacks. It was basically the Shelby Miller deal. They traded cash, player to be named later, and they picked up Jordan Montgomery's salary. Jordan Montgomery stayed with the Brewers a bit. Pat Murphy chatted a little bit about how he really liked Montgomery. Montgomery like shoved, I think it was back in 23 with the Rangers, even through the postseason, like dominated. He was a little bit like that sort of just veteran who knew what he's got and knew how to utilize it. Went to Arizona. The owner was publicly slobbering at him. And Montgomery didn't take that well, had Tommy John surgery, was never going to pitch for the Brewers this year, even despite that trade. But I just wonder, a little bit of time seeing what Milwaukee has to offer, a little bit of time seeing the vibe in that clubhouse. I feel like he's going to be a 1 year sort of contract dude, looking to make a bit of a name for himself. He's shown some historic success. He's just back from injury, and the Brewers love a guy who's just back from injury and hope that he won't get injured and then inevitably will get injured at the most inopportune time. So he ticks all those boxes. So Jordan Montgomery is my guy who I think makes the most sense for maybe a 1 to 2 win guy, bit of veteran experience, been there, done that in the playoffs. What do you reckon, Jace?
So let me ask you this. Obviously, there was like hilarious discourse between him and the owner, where the owner was straight up like, dude, I regret signing this kid. And Jordan Montgomery was like, bet, let me go on the 60-day IL, buddy. But obviously, like leading up to that, there was like poor performances, right? Like that statement wasn't made just off the cuff. It was like in 2024, Jordan Montgomery pitched 117 innings to a 6.23 ERA. So what do you think happened right after he was like a major piece of the Rangers World Series run? And what do you think kind of needs to be fixed outside of the obvious recovery from injury?
I mean, the first thing is Arizona, despite being a slightly bigger ballpark, because of like the general heat that they have in that area, has often been quite a home run prone sort of ballpark. Back, is it Chase Field? Correct me if I'm wrong, and that I could be way wrong. Sorry to the sponsors of
you
the
are.
Arizona Diamondbacks. But so yes, there's that. There's the triples alley. Part of me thinks there is a bit of that. There's also, you're talking about a short period of time where regression can hit. I haven't looked too deeply into the numbers. I might do. You sort of tell me yours, and I'll maybe come back with something. But I don't think his Arsenal changed too much from memory. It just wasn't playing quite as well as it did with the Rangers. Now, we also know how the Rangers sort of park kind of dampened those sort of fly balls. It certainly did this year. I remember the Brewers playing them down there at Global Life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting so good at this. These dudes should be like paying us to rep them. Like, it's so impressive we know this. Anyway, yeah, so that maybe played a part, but like the dude was solid for the Cardinals as well. Pitchers can drop off a cliff, but I would be surprised if that continued. And I also wouldn't be surprised if there was some form of that injury. We've heard of pitchers pitching through Tommy John, like, yeah, my elbow's painful, but I can pitch through it. And the surgery is almost more painful than actually pitching through the injury. So that wouldn't surprise me overly either. But again, it remains to be seen. And he's the type of contract in a 1-year deal where you can bring someone back and say, do you know what? We've committed like $5 million and maybe like $7 million in a mutual option that will not be picked up next year. And we can live with that if we have to cut you and it doesn't work. If we get the best of you, we get a guy who can really eat innings. So, yeah, I think that might be valuable to them, but on that low deal, if he likes the clubhouse.
Yeah, so my pick is along a similar vein, but I think less risky. I think Dustin May. Step right on up, dude. Let's see what you got. So I think Dustin May is a bit like an interesting wild card because 2025 was the first season he had ever thrown more than 60 innings, and it wasn't great. It was 132 in third innings to a 4.96 ERA with a 4.88 FIP. Strikeout rate 21.1%, below average. Walk rate 9.6%. That's above average, right? So stuff TLDR not working. Not a great arm. Obviously got traded from the Dodgers to the Red Sox, was similarly bad. But I think that there's a lot of potential there to be unlocked. Obviously, he was coming off a very long layoff, and even in his past, it was on and off the injured list with all sorts of injuries. Like, he's a guy that's just has broken a couple mirrors, walked under a couple ladders, and lived with 45 black cats because, I mean, you're talking about a guy who tore his esophagus eating a salad. Which is a next level of bad juju that, like, I don't know, dude, but I feel like at this point, dude, his karma has been so bad, it's got to flip, it's got to turn around, right? Like, we're waiting for the dice to fall the other way. He lost a ton of velocity. He was like 2 miles an hour on average on his fastball and 200 RPM of spin on a sweeper. So overall, diminished stuff. His arm angle dropped from like 30 degrees in 2023 to 21 degrees to 2025. So he's getting a little bit more on the side there. And overall, I think his stock is pretty low. And, it's his performance, but it's also like, all right, gave you all this time to, get your body together, get your body right, get your health right. And then you came out and had below satisfactory season. So not only is injury risk, it's like, do we even know if this guy can pitch at the major leagues at like a high level? We're not really sure. And I think, the Brewers have this reputation of like, oh, just like send all the children there and they'll magically be fixed. I don't necessarily know that's true. I think the Brewers do need to have at least like something to go off of. And I think that, I still think Dustin May's ability to split the zone laterally is really fascinating. Like, if he gets his sweeper and his sinker moving correctly, it's almost like prime Blake Treinen. So I think there is some upside there. He's only 28. He's not like super old where it's like, dude, this guy is what he is. And like you said, if you get him on a 1 or 2 year deal, that's like a pretty low AAV or like a low financial commitment. And if it works out, awesome. If it doesn't, you're out at most like 10 to 15 million bucks per year or whatnot, or total, depending on how like frugal they are and depending on how competitive the market is for Dustin May. But I think that he has a potential to get things cooking. I think we've seen it with other guys. Like, it's happened so many times. I'm like, oh, they signed this guy who was definitely just done. He's cooked. And then he comes back and they might not be like a Justin Verlander 2022 1.75 ERA Cy Young season, but they'll give you like a strong, like low 3 ERA over 100 to 150 innings. So I think Dustin May could be a fun project for the Brewers pitching lab this upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting arm. That sweeper is obviously the highlight of it. I think his inability at times to work like that north south can kind of impinge on him. Like we see people like Michael King, who has that sinker that really bears in on you, and then the sweeper that goes miles away. Dustin May's sinker is pretty good, but it's not that same sort of level. And Michael King from the low arm angle really gets a good bit of sort of that vertical approach angle, which means because it's from a low arm slot, it really looks like it's rising on you when it reaches you. And I think that really allows the rest of his arsenal to play up a little bit more. When you're just working east to west, it can allow you to get a little bit hit. The sweeper from May is awesome, but it is also more of a weak contact pitch. Again, it works well with like a Brewers sort of defense. But the Red Sox are interesting because obviously they took Quinn Priester. So they saw probably similar things the Brewers did. They tried to say, look, can we get your velo up? Let's start working on a cutter. The Brewers took him and said, no, we're gonna finish the polishing this dude and turn him into a monster. But I can certainly see the Brewers turning around, and he started to work on a cutter, I think, towards or started using it more with the Red Sox, who are very favorably against like premier fastballs of late. So I can certainly see that being an option for the Brewers, even though they're had the complete opposite approach of we're just going to kill you with fastballs. But that slight difference in how they use them seems to play up really quite well. So I can certainly see that being a match. And I'm not sure how many suitors May will have, having been off an injury, fully healthy season, didn't perform all that well. And previously has had actually quite good stuff. And I wonder whether Chris Hook would look at the way, the spin rates he gets, the velo he gets and things. I can unlock this dude. Like I can take him from, he has the raw potential, but it's not clicking to there's the click. So that I really like that shout. I really like that shout, Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So number 2, okay. You're saying I want someone who's a little bit more of a difference maker, not just your run-of-the-mill Brewers signing who we pretend to be excited about. Somebody gets Twitter going. Yeah.
So you're asking me who my number 2, like my reach candidate is?
Yeah, just a little bit of a reach. Not like I'm stretching, but just picking my glass up from the table.
I think if Milwaukee, they made a lot of money from the postseason. They sold a lot of tickets to the sausage races in October. They're rolling in the dough. I think that if you really want to like supercharge this rotation, again, maybe this is a reach. You can call me unrealistic, but that's the point of this section. Give me Ranger Suarez of the Philadelphia Phillies. So Ranger Suarez, I'm going to be real. I've never heard his voice. Very soft-spoken kind of dude. He just kind of gets his work done, and he does it well. A bastion of consistency in that Phillies rotation. 3.38 ERA over 8 big league seasons. Really great, just southpaw talent. He's got an average strikeout rate at 23.2%. So he's not blowing guys away. He's not prime Randy Johnson slapping you across the face in Seattle. But he thrives on minimizing walks and hard contact. So he had a hard hit rate, 31.1% last year. That was in the 98th percentile. Pretty darn good. He's the kind of guy that'll give you like a solid 150 plus innings every single year. Probably not going to start a lot of drama in the locker room. Again, clocking in and clocking out. I'm not saying that he's like Anthony Rendon where this is just a job to him, but dude, like this guy just deals on the mound and he doesn't do it with any extra pizzazz or fluff. Definitely on the pricier side. So I think MLB Trade Rumors has his projected contract at 5 years, $150 million, which is quite a bit, especially for the Brewers. But I mean, they need to restock with somebody, hopefully like a veteran presence, especially if they get rid of Peralta. Like again, I don't know if they really want 5 kids running around in that rotation. And Suarez has been around the block. I'm not sure how long it's going to take for. I mean, their current southpaw options for starters, it's really like Robert Gasser. I don't know how long it's going to take for him to like become like a big part of that rotation. He's still pretty young, still doesn't have a ton of big league innings under his belt. And I think the last left-handed starter for the Brewers that was younger than 36 years old, aka not ancient, was Eric Lauer back in 2022 to pitch more than 110 innings. So it's been a minute since
playoff legend. I mean, let's not look past that, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's time. think it's time to bring a lefty home to get a southpaw talent in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and see what he can do. But a Rangers Suarez is my reach pick.
Yeah, I mean, I look even the annual average annual value wouldn't bother me too much. It's the 5 years. I think the Brewers should be real hesitant about. But like, I'm not saying it's not a good fit. I like him, the pitchability. He's the type of dude who, even if the stuff wears down a little bit, seems like he'd be able to handle that. You know, his command has been on point, and he eats innings, which is an issue of the Brewers this year. You know, the pen wore down because they couldn't get into the sixth inning and beyond regularly. So, like, it's a good fit if the Brewers probably made more than they're currently doing per year. They did make more this year, but if they're consistently making the playoffs, that's great. But if they miss them, yeah. But look, hey, it's a bit of a reach, but I get it. Like, it's a good fit. I mean, mine is probably slightly cheaper. I think it's maybe more in the – he's looking for a multi-year deal. And it's probably more in the 3 years 60 or 2 year 45 million sort of range, depending on people who like the injury history, is Ha-Seong Kim. So shortstop, excellent shortstop. Covers second base as well if you want the right-handed option to replace Turang. He's the type of guy who, if someone does go down injured in that sort of middle infield, you're happy throwing him in either position. Elite has shown his ability to pull the ball, and when he pulls the ball in the air, he will get out of the park. Not premier exit velocities, or he's going to hit 25 homers in a year, but he has enough to he will consistently hit 12 to 15 home runs a year, maybe 18 in a good year. I think that's pretty handy. He's the type of player the Brewers love. Great bat to ball skills. Even when he chases, he generally makes good contact. So I think the defense, the contact, he's just like, his floor compared to what Joey Ortiz showed this year is like chalk and cheese. And I'm happy. I don't mind as much as most Joey coming into next year as earning his way into shortstop, but I think he has to have some competition at least. Right. And even if Ha-Seong Kim is more of a, you know, let's rotate him around the diamond. You know, we can go all righties against a left-handed sort of starter with, you know, Kim at second, Ortiz at shortstop, and Durbin at third base. You can cycle, give players a little bit more time off. I think it adds their depth at the very least, but also gives them an option. If Ortiz is showing the same as he did last year with sort of a ceiling of like a 690, 700 OPS guy, you're like, actually, I need more from you. And that's Ha-Seong Kim's like base performance. And that's where I can sort of see that maybe happening. Maybe.
Yeah. Dude, I think people forgot about Ha-Seong Kim, bro, because it's the past 2 years. He hasn't played much because of injury, right? But dude, that 2023, he was balling on the Padres. Like I don't think people realize, like, the Padres was a team in 2023. You think of like Tatis, you think of Manny Machado, you think of Yu Darvish. Ha-Seong Kim was like one of the most valuable members of that team because he is, like you said, he has all these great qualities of a ball player, and I think that he is. I think it's very interesting. He signed a $13 million deal for this year. He was on the Rays, and then he got shipped over to Atlanta, and he had a $60 million player option that he declined. So I think he thinks that he's going to sign something a little bit longer, and he has confidence and ability in his market. So I think that's a good shout. And I think that the reason he does is because, like, since he debuted in the league, I don't know when, he's just like a very consistent guy. Like, he's like a good at the plate. He's not, like you said, he's not going to give you 20 home runs, but he's going to do what he needs to do. And I think he fits and profiles well with the Brewers. I am curious, like, when he does sign, what the terms of that contract will be. I heard the Braves do want to bring him back. But dude, Ha-Seong Kim is a cool dude. I think it would be awesome to have him on the Brewers. I think he's just like a funny guy to like have around. And yeah, underrated ball player, I think, in my opinion.
100%. And it's weird. He's like a slightly older version of like Ha-Seong Kim, which is like super weird. Like this high energy utility infielder, wizard defensively, can steal bases, like just pumps the energy up. And like the names, I mean, they just.
Dude, I don't know if you knew this. They were double playmates in the KBO.
No.
So they were, yeah, dude. So Ha-Seong played second base for the Kiwoom Heroes, I think. and Ha-Seong Kim played shortstop. So it was like whatever you think, dude. Like that happened. Like
So there was a commentator saying, and it's Hae-Seong Kim to Hae-Seong Kim.
I mean, yeah,
Chris,
it's a common last name in Korea, and I think it's both were like literal like middle infield studs back in Kiwoom. So yeah, like we won't get Hae-Seong Kim because he's in LA, but we'll get the other one. We'll get the older one. We'll get the I forgot the term. The Hyung. I don't know if you know about Koreans. Like Hyung is like the older brother, like the older one. Then we'll get the Hyung of the Kim combo.
Dude,
Hey,
I love your knowledge in this.
give you some cultural nods right there. Everybody in the podcast learning a little bit more about Korean people.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. Okay, let's get into our first. Is this real life free agent suggestion? This is like back in. This is the copium levels of like the 2023 winter leading into 2024 when Pirates fans were like, could we sign Shohei Ohtani? Like, is this possible? This is the level of like unrealistic conjecture that we're going to get into right now.
Yeah, 100%.
So for me, I think Alex Bregman will be on a different level to have. Here's the thesis, right? I know Matt Truba wrote a piece about like, is it worth it to find a guy to like for Caleb Durbin to split time, take some of the infield burden off of him? I mean, Alex Bregman, you split time with a guy like Alex Bregman, who is one of the most consistent bats in MLB. Regardless, your feelings of 2017 aside, I feel like no matter how much you don't like what he did with the sign stealing scandal, if he were to be a 6 or 5 WAR player for your team and help lead a deep postseason run, I think all is forgiven. Like he did that in Boston. Like they conveniently forgot everything that happened when he was playing at an MVP level at the beginning of the year. So that's aside. Consistent bat. I mean, he had a 128 OPS plus last season, 18 homers, 28 doubles. This was with time lost due to time on the injured list. Plate discipline, some of the best in the business. Still only 31 years old, so you got a lot of runway for a guy whose play style, kind of similar to some of the players we mentioned before. Like it's one that you can kind of keep it up even into your older years. It's not one that's super dependent on athleticism or anything like that. I think he's just a really solid fundamental player. He's an undersized guy like Caleb Durbin, not as undersized as Durbin, but he's, still on the smaller side. But he's made it work for a reason. I think that's just because he has a really strong base of baseball skills, and be it playing defense, be it at the plate, whatever he's got to do at third base, I think he's really good. So if the Brewers want to, go absolutely gangbusters crazy, I think Bregman is projected to, by MLB trade rumors, to get 6 years, 160 million. I think he might honestly get like a little bit more than that. I think he's just like a very valuable player. So we'll see where the market ends up being. But that alone is way more than the Milwaukee would ever pay for like a single human being, I feel like.
100%. And I think part of me thinks that actually the Bregman deal from last year wasn't that costly because he was just waiting. It was kind of like the Bellinger deal where he's just waiting for one good season to then turn around and say, right, I'm opting out. Obviously, there's that risk as the Brewers got bitten by, Rhys Hoskins for that sort of same deal where they're thinking, right, it'll be 1 year, he'll have a good year, and then we're sort of free after that one. He's definitely, of the sort of reach candidates, he is very much the out there one where you'd sort of consider. I'm going to throw one under the mix, and I hate doing this because I'm a big Garrett Mitchell stan. I don't think you toss away a player who is earning like $1 million next year and has that sort of potential. You're not going to get that in the free agent market realistically. But one player I can think of who might upgrade, even whether it's left field or right field or however you're looking to do it. Let's look at Cody Bellinger, man. So the market might not be as big as we think. Okay, the guy had, and the reason being, the dude is a left-handed hitter who just capitalized in the short porch in Yankees field, right? He turned around, he had 909 OPS in home, and it was like 715 away from home. But we've seen seasons where he pulls the ball in the air a ton, okay? He was diminished a little bit by Chicago in 24. I think it was a really poor decision of them to get rid of him at that point for like basically nothing and say this guy's worth so little, just take him for nothing. I thought that was poor, just pay his salary and we're away. So we can trade loads for Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker's great, but Cody Bellinger's capable of that. The Brewers wouldn't have made that decision, but when you're the Cubs, maybe it's different mentality. But I like Bellinger. I like his swing. He's a super chill dude. For a variety of reasons. If you can see the redness in his eyes, that probably plays a part in it. But look, the guy takes his bases, hits the ball hard, he pulls the ball in the air. He's an outstanding fielder as well. He was really, really strong in right field this year. In center field, he can cover first base in a pinch. And I think that sort of versatility plays well with the Brewers. And because of those home road splits, I wonder if his market won't be as big as it should be when you're a dude coming off, just double checking. Yeah, an 814 OPS with like really strong defensive sort of performance. That I think that is not impossible. Not likely, Jason. But like, how would you like to see Cody Bellinger and Christian Yelich play on the same team? Like, imagine if you told that to someone who's a Brewers fan in 2019, you'd be like, yeah, these guys are going to play on the same team in 6 years. What would you react?
I think that'd be insane. I also think that, I don't know, I personally didn't hear much about Bellinger on the Yankees this year compared to like heard a lot about Judge, obviously, heard a lot about Jazz, heard a lot about Max Fried. But I think for me, like Bellinger had like because of his rough few final years with the Dodgers, I think people kind of forgot that this guy's like a ball player, and he had a good year with the Cubs in 23, and then 24 it was like a little bit more average. But dude, he had a great year this year, like you said, 125 OPS plus, played 152 games, was like very very active, and played excellent defense in the outfield, played a couple games at first base, so really versatile player, great skill set, very well rounded. I don't know what his projected market is going to be. I assume it is probably going to be pretty healthy if he decided to dip. So we'll see, but I think that he would be a good fit, and I think there is room for another outfielder in Milwaukee. I think obviously Churrio's locked in for life, whatever. I think Self-Relix, great player. Isaac Collins, I think I have some questions about because of the way that he kind of finished the year, and it was like, dude, first months of the season, he was like, oh, this kid is like incoming National League Rookie of the Year. He's cooking, stoves on. And then he kind of like towards the end, like definitely petered out, ran out of gas. So don't know like how that's going to kind of manifest next year or in the future, or like what that's going to look like. And again, like if they did want to go big or go home, I think the outfield does present an opportunity to get better in a big way. And I think Cody Bellinger could be like a pipe dream fit, but a fit nonetheless, right?
Yeah. And like when you're saying it, we're looking at probably three positions. One, you look at third base and say, can Caleb Durbin be more of that? Let's rotate you around a couple of spots. Is it shortstop? Minimal options there. Or can we fit you over that Isaac Collins sort of role for that real upgrade? Because there's not many big guaranteed contracts. You'd be like, that's my dude. It's not like there's a one sort of, or like a big name this offseason. Even in the, international market, in Japan, people talk about Murakami, but the dude's third base is questionable, even though he's being broadcast as such. And he swings and miss so often. Like it's like Joey Gallo, but maybe slightly worse. So look, there's I don't think it's the strongest free agent field in a lot of ways, which means that like the competition for the bigger names is probably going to be more difficult. And incoming with the potential lockout coming next year, which can really affect revenue, certainly did back in 2021. I can maybe see there's going to be an issue here with teams wanting to go longer. Maybe the Brewers can pounce on that, or maybe they'll say, do you know what, we can't afford to be losing money. If we have a whole season off or miss half a season, we can afford that far less than the Yankees, the Cubs, the Dodgers. So we just like that's not happening. No one's buying Isaac Collins jerseys the way they're buying Shohei Ohtani's, unfortunately. Sad reality, but I think there's a lot of factors at play which make sort of the long-term deals difficult.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And kind of to drill deeper into your point about the state of the free agent market this winter, it's very skewed. There are a lot of really great rotation options, I think, at the different tranches of like you got your elite guys that have been elite and probably will continue to stay elite, like Framber Valdez, You have your guys that are like good but could be great. Like their upside is insane, like Dylan Cease or like Michael King. You have like a bunch of really high quality relievers. And the position players, you got like your Pete Alonso's, your Kyle Tuckers, your Bregmans. And then I feel like there's a big gap. And there's like a couple guys that are like maybe could be good and like risky options. So I think that in and of itself, when it comes to reloading in the lineup, makes it a little bit tricky. And then like a lot of the points you made, dude, like I don't know, the 2027 possible lockout coming, especially like with the Dodgers' victory of the World Series and the fact that the two teams in the World Series, Toronto's paying $230 million a year payroll, and the Dodgers have like some unfathomable amount of like bottomless coffers that they're paying their guys out of. And that might even get worse this winter. Who knows who they'll end up picking up in this offseason, if anybody at all. But I think it is definitely a thing the front office is absolutely considering. Like, there is a good chance that, you know, things will get ugly. We might have a play stoppage. We might lose a couple games. And, you know, every game like is a pretty significant amount of revenue, especially when it comes to home games as well as like broadcast revenue and things like that. So when it comes to projecting that top line for that front office, how that's going to affect the way they approach contract negotiations this winter, probably going to make them a little bit more risk averse, even more than usual, despite the kind of one-off thing of like going a little bit deeper in the postseason this year, selling more tickets, selling more hot dogs, selling more beers, and seeing whether that sort of like financial growth is going to be sustainable enough to drive a pricier team in the future.
Yeah. I mean, just one last note then. One name you mentioned there, I found nearly put in for my sort of second portion there as a slight reach. I found Michael King super interesting. Like, what would your opinions on him sort of be with the Brewers? Do you see it as a fit at all, or just a little too out of reach?
I didn't look at what his projected contract would be, but if we just look at qualitatively, like I think he's a really interesting pitcher, right? He's another example, like a closer gone starter. I feel like that's like starting to come into vogue with like talks of the Padres wanting to convert Mason Miller into a rotation arm again. I think that he's got a lot of stuff. I mean, we talked about some of his pitches, dude, like his sinker, disgusting, like atrocious, like inedible, like unpalatable. Some of his stuff is really good. I forgot what injury that sidelined him for most of the year. He only pitched like 73 innings. But if it was purely a qualitative situation of like, would this guy make our team better by a considerable amount that would be worth pursuing a contract for, I would say, yeah, absolutely. But again, like the financial terms are probably going to hold higher weight this winter just because of the economic reality of like where the sport is and where it's going, you know?
And sad thing about, in some ways the market now is that prices are going up year on year, and yet the Brewers are not able to expand their payroll the same amount year on year, and it just almost prices them out each subsequent. Like the Yelich contract looks 27 million a year. You're like, yeah, he was an MVP in 2018, maybe should have been in 2019, and now you look at that was when the contract was based. If you said that's 24, 27 million a year, you'd be like, oh my gosh, that's such a steal now compared to what everybody else is sort of paying for this level of talent. So locking them in now is probably going to look cheap-ish in 5 years, but it's such a difficult thing. And I love Michael King, dude. Like, I'm a big fan. I love his arsenal. Love the way he pitches. Love that sweeper, Cinco, that east-west combo. Just catch me if you can, son. What was it? Catch me outside. How about that? Literally outside the zone. You ain't catching that. But he's a name I certainly considered there. I just want to get your sort of quick views on it.
Yeah, no, I think he'd be good. I mean, there's a couple other like options that I was mulling over. Like, I think Ryan O'Hearn, he's someone that the team was interested at the deadline. He might still be like he reminds me kind of like a Rhys Hoskins, but with less risk because he's not coming off of a long layoff, right? Like he did play all of last year. He's not giving you like 45,000 bombs. He's not like Mark McGuire on his whole milk diet, but he's got a well-rounded approach. He's a high average guy over the past few years. He plays good defense, and he should be pretty cheap on like a 2-year deal, probably like 30 to 32 million type of situation. Other guys, like I think there's a lot of options. I just think that the market is like, I don't want to sound like a curmudgeon, but I feel like it's super inflated because even like some of these reliever contracts, man, like we're projecting Edwin Diaz, Ryan Helsley's projected at like 80 million, like over 4. Devin Williams, similar kind of and it's insane. right? It's genuinely insane. Even Josh Naylor, the people are like saying Josh Naylor is going to get like 120 million over 5 or 6, which is
I mean, dude, if
a
you're
lot.
watching like Daniel Vogelbach steal like 20 bases a season, I'd pay 120 million just for that
Dude.
lane. That's what we're talking about here, you know? This is a dude who, like, I don't know how he does it, but I just want to watch that. I think that's worth the entertainment value alone. But I'm not Matt Arnold, but like
Dude.
it's fun.
So I had the privilege of watching him a lot here in Seattle after he got traded. And when he steals bases, dude, his running motion, it looks like Santa running from house to house on Christmas, where it's like short strides but fast turnover, and his caboose is kind of like it's like half a second behind the rest of his body. But dude, I think he was like such an insidious guy on the base paths where nobody was like, yeah, this guy's not stealing. And then he's like taking a 40-foot lead, and then he just the last 60 or 50, he's like, oh, I'm there already. So I don't know what he's gonna end up signing for and who he'll end up with. But I think the broader point of like, I think players are getting more expensive at the top, and I think that that's indicative of a broader economic disparity within the organizations where like you're either spending more than 200 million or you're spending less than 140. And unfortunately, the Brewers kind of fall in the latter group, and especially when it comes to like, dude, baseball ultimately, like you kind of have to take risks on players, and some contracts can be bad. Some of them are going to be really good, and those are going to be the ones that kind of elevate your organization to the next level. I think the Brewers being so risk averse, it works in the regular season, and we've seen it be successful in the regular season. But when it comes down to brass tacks, like again, I think about the Dodgers series, it really just seemed like a little league team playing like the high school varsity team, where it was just like, dude, everybody is just getting blown away. And so like we'll see like how the results of this October will have, if at all, changed the front office's approach to roster construction. But I honestly am pretty bearish on that happening.
Yeah, I would say the same. I don't think it's going to change their approach that much, and part of that is, although it looked horrific in the championship series, in some ways any baseball team can lose any 4 games in a row. And the Brewers put 6 runs on Yamamoto in like 2/3 of an inning earlier in the year. It just ball's fault. I just don't think the Brewers put their best foot forward. They weren't playing the way they had all year. They weren't passing the baton. They weren't grinding out at bats. They just were a shell of themselves. They lost their identity a little bit. Whether that was motivation, energy, where they just had a bit of a lull from the Cubs series. But I just don't think you were showing the Brewers at their best. And unfortunately, when they play the way they do, if they're not at their best, they look awful, as we saw even like the first 4 games of the season, never mind the last 4. Like, it's all about intent when you have that style. So the question is, do they find ways to hold up a bit better throughout the season? Maybe that is, we need to give Murphy more depth in the bullpen, which would be an interesting one. So you're not just spamming the same 3-4 guys repeatedly and pretending the rest of the team doesn't exist. Like, there was a point where we did wonder whether Tobias Myers had actually like told Pat Murphy, yeah, I'm not just here to watch, by the way. I'm not just here on, a little bit of shadowing sort of stuff. I'm actually here to pitch if you need me. Like, maybe that's the way they're looking to go. And I think that would be an interesting dynamic. But other than that, it's going to be difficult. It just has to be, do we reinforce the depth and give more sort of time off for guys throughout the season, which could very much be the approach change they look for. But one could argue that's the approach they've maybe gone for the last few years, just haven't leaned into it quite as heavily.
Yeah, I will say you bring up a good point in terms of executing, because if you look at the Toronto Blue Jays and the way they played against the Dodgers, like the Blue Jays have a very high payroll. A lot of that is skewed between a couple guys, right? Like it's Vladdy, Gosman, Springer, and Barrios occupy like a lion's share of that payroll. But the guys that are having a real impact, Ernie Clement, Addison Barger, Alejandro Kirk, they're not getting paid colossal contracts, right? And they were kind of doing, and people were saying like this is like they were doing to the Dodgers what the Brewers could have and should have done, which is like grinding out at bats, working pitch counts, and getting to that bullpen. And that's when they were able to like dude, like Blake Snell against the Dodgers versus Blake Snell against the Brewers was like night and day. Blake Snell against the Brewers was like prime Sandy Koufax. Like, what, this guy's unhittable. But against the Blue Jays, they're like, just fouling. They're fouling off good stuff. They're spitting on the bad stuff. And then before you know it, Snell's pitching like, 25, 30 pitches an inning. And it's like, oh, we got to take him out soon. And then you get to the shakiness that is a Dodgers bullpen. There was a lot of stuff about those games in the World Series that I was like, oh, the Brewers could have done this. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like 4 quadruple billionaire players like hitting 5 homers a game. It's like guys that are early on in their career making league minimum or close to it pre-arb, grinding out what they need to grind in order to get their team ahead and like get their team's chance of winning a little bit higher. So I think the approach can and does work. We'll just kind of see if like it was enough of like a miss this year for them to say like, all right, we need to turn up the gas a little bit in the winter.
Yeah, I think I can't add to that. Beautiful word of Jason. As eloquent as the Queen or King.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. I love telling people that English is my second language because they have to believe it because I'm Asian. But no, I was born. They did, dude. Fun fact. This is a fun aside. When I went to school, elementary school in New York City, I went to like a school in like a predominantly like Chinese immigrant area. So they threw me into ESL automatically without testing me first. And then they like on the first test or whatever, I was like speaking and writing English, and they're like, all right, we think this kid might be in the wrong spot. Get him in the American classroom. So
gotcha. And did they put you in the math class as well, or just?
Oh, bro, they put me like 3 grades ahead automatic. I was like, yeah, dude.
Dude, I don't even know. I shouldn't even be making these jokes. Not even from like the same content.
Fair projection, dude. Fair projection. Okay.
Right,
any final notes? Yeah, any final notes before we wrap, Jake, or are you good?
Absolutely none, mate. Absolutely none. It's too late, and I'll put my foot in my mouth.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us on this session of 2 guys spitballing random names for the Brewers to potentially and probably not spend money on. But we will see you next time something important happens in the offseason, which is hopefully pretty soon. Thanks, everybody.
Interesting, dudes.